Okay, hello. Yes, we are live. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Tonight's show is all about F1 cost cap explained. We're gonna talk money. This is F1 Grandstand. I'm Tony Craig, and if you are an F1 fan, then you are, of course, in the right place. Please, if you're watching right now, smash a like on the video and hit the bell so you can stay up to date. It makes a huge difference to the success of the channel, and I'm so very, very grateful to all of you. And the reason why we're talking about the F1 cost cap tonight is because Aston Martin have just been found in a procedural breach for the 2024 cost cap. We will be getting into all of it. Now, the interesting thing about the cost cap, hey, Kyle. Hey, Gemma. Hey, DT. Kyle, straight in there with, I like money. Yes, I do. So this is interesting because, a lot of people talk to me about cost caps and they think they understand it. And some of them obviously definitely do understand how money works in Formula One. But some people might be surprised at exactly how it works. So I thought tonight we'd do a little bit of edutainment, right? And we can talk about it. So let's get into it. So, cost cap. Basically, what is a cost cap? All of the F1 teams are allowed to spend a certain amount of money, okay? And that certain amount of money right now is $135 million per year for one part of the cost cap. Now, originally, they set the budget in 2021 of $175 million, but because of the pandemic, they reduced it to $145 million. In 2022, it came down to $135 million in 2023, and it's still that today in 2025. But what does it cover? What does that money actually cover? Because when you're paying Lewis Hamilton $40 million a year, you think, how the hell are they doing all this? This is where it gets interesting. So, the $135 million per year this year cost cap includes the following. All parts on the car from the steering wheel to the wheel nuts, but excluding the engine / power unit. All the elements needed to run the car. Most of the team personnel, I'll be coming to that in a minute, that's a very important point. All the garage equipment from tyre guns to socket sets. All the spares for the car, suspension parts, aero parts, wings, all the transport costs to get the entire team to the Grand Prix, and everything in between. But we need to know, well, what's not included in that cost cap? Well, first, the biggest cost that's not included under the cost cap is the F1 drivers' salaries, right? So if you're Ferrari and you want to pay Lewis Hamilton $40 million a year, it doesn't come out of your cost cap. So if you are a team with big budgets, you're able to attract and pay for the best drivers. So there's still an advantage by being one of the richer teams, okay? The wages, this one's interesting. That's not included in the cost cap is the wages of the 3 highest paid members of staff. So if you're looking at like Mercedes or McLaren, let's look at Aston Martin. You'll be talking like the Adrian Newey's, the Andy Cowells, and probably Cardle as well. Travel costs, that's not included. So if you're sending your boys first class, that's on you. Marketing spend. Now this is interesting. If you've got a cost cap and you can't, but you're allowed to spend as much on marketing as you want outside of that cost cap, what's the advantage? Because even if you're making money, you can't put it onto the car. But you can pay for the wages of your 3 highest members of staff and those huge drivers' salaries. So if you're marketing your brand, which helps you get more advertising revenue in, it helps pay for all this other stuff, right? Property and legal costs, they're not included either. So you could have your amazing headquarters, which has cost you $1 billion, and that does not come out of your cost cap. All entry and license fees do not come out of your cost cap. Any non-F1 or road car activities do not come out of your cost cap. Parental and sick leave payments do not come out of your cost cap payments. And also, this is interesting, employee bonuses and staff medical benefits do not come out of your cost cap, which allows for some very interesting employee contracts, right? Because if you want to keep your employees lower paid so it comes within the cost cap, their bonuses, which could be huge sums of money, sit outside of the cost cap. And the only team to ever have breached the cost cap or spent more than their cost cap is Red Bull. In 2021, they had a $145 million budget and they spent 5% over that, and they were hit with a $7 million fine and a 10% reduction in aero testing for 2023 as a punishment. And here's the other big question. Well, what about the engines and the power units? They have their own cost cap. So currently, the engine cost cap per team is $95 million per year. And that's been the same from 2022 to 2025. I'm going to talk to you about what's happening in 2026 in a minute, because these numbers are moving. But that's how it works. There are two cost caps, one for engines and one for everything else. And there are things that sit outside of the cost caps, like driver salaries. And the three is high, and all the things that we just talked about. So when we talk about cost caps, they are relevant, but it still means that the richer teams, your Mercedes, your Ferraris, and your McLarens, can afford to pay their drivers huge sums of money because it doesn't come out of that $135 million cost cap. Now, that means there are still advantages then, right? Because if you're a budget team, you're never going to be able to attract top drivers and pay them their salaries. So that's still a disadvantage, right? That's how it works. And the other thing as well, though, because of the cost cap, if you are spending, you're allowed to spend as much as you want on marketing to help bring in the advertisers, which ultimately will give you a net positive result, you could effectively end up with a lot of money coming into the team that you can spend then on the things that sit outside of the cost cap. You can travel better. You can travel all first class and private jets. You can give bigger bonuses to your team members. You can pay your 3 highest members of staff whatever the hell you want. Plus, you can give driver salaries up to unlimited amounts. But that's how the money works. And the way things are changing in 2026, the cost caps are going up. So we're at $135 million right now for the main cost, for the team cost cap. That is going up to exactly $215 million next year for 2026. That's for the team cost cap. The engine cost cap is going up to $130 million from 95 in 2026. So that means those budgets have gone up significantly for 2026, which is one of the reasons is because apparently Audi said, well, our team's based in Switzerland and we have to pay our people a hell of a lot more money. But what it actually is because we've got new teams coming to the grid like Cadillac, which are going to need to spend a lot more money. And actually, because a lot more money is coming to the sport, most teams are leveling up, right? They're leveling up with their sponsorships. They're leveling up with the interest around the globe, especially in America. More money's coming into the sport. So the team's leveling up with their development. Plus, with this new electrification era for the next generation, I mean, it is quite expensive for those power units. But it does mean teams like Mercedes, who are supplying 4 teams on the grid with Mercedes power units, and Ferrari, who are supplying 3 teams on the grid with their power units. It means that their budgets for Haas and Cadillac, their cost cap for their power units is all going back to Ferrari. So they're going to be net positive, right? They're going to make money on all of that, which helps pay for those huge salaries that only they can pay for. So the big teams still get an advantage, even though the cost caps have been introduced. I'm going to go to the chat. Okay, so Kyle says Lawrence Stroll has to pay for all his son's wrecked cars. Actually, the wrecked cars does come out of the team's cost cap. Wreck a car, it's got to come out of your 135 million. Gemma says he came in like a wrecking ball. Just DT says, Kyle, I hope they make more of the larger Technic models for all the teams, including Cadillac. I'd be in trouble. And then I'd be in trouble too if she knew how much I actually spent. I should start calling her MBS. She'd get the reference. Cadillac is estimated to spending 1.5 billion to get started. Yeah, I mean, If it's outside of the operating cost, if you're buying buildings, that doesn't come out of the cost cap, right? So they could set up a facility and spend $1 billion on it. They could spend 500 million on the FIA license. That doesn't come out of it. The race entries don't come out of it. So basically, if you're setting up a team, you could spend 1.5 billion. And to set it up. Hey, Nota J, good evening. So how the money works is it's actually a bit deceiving, because they say, oh, we want to make it fairer for all the teams. It does make it fairer, because before these cost caps were introduced, you had teams like Ferrari and Mercedes spending upwards and over $400 million a year, where the teams at the back of the grid were only spending maybe $100 million a year. And so it was right to introduce an element of fairness, so all the teams could sort of compete from a development point of view. But there are still advantages with these big works teams, because they're able to pay the drivers, the top drivers, to entice them in. They're able to pay their top 3 staff any amount of money that they want, and they're able to have development there in their building and facilities, which, you know, so it is still, and it's still not totally fair, right? But it has made the sport fairer. And the fact that these cost caps are going up in 2026 means that they will have enough new money to help develop this new platform of cars, where the first year is always going to be the most expensive, and the type of engine power they're using, which are using electrification, does make it more complicated, does make it more expensive. So I think these cost caps will gradually increase, but I think the lower end teams like your Haas's will start bringing in more revenue, because the sport is growing globally, and especially in the places where there is money, like the United States. So the cost cap, the reason why we're talking about it today is because Aston Martin today were found in a procedural breach. There's all these rumours going around about 2024 saying teams are in breach of the cost cap regulations, which means they could have had a reduction in wind tunnel time. Other penalties could have been levied on them, financial penalties. But the truth is, every single team in 2024 did not breach the cost cap. Aston Martin failed on a procedural element. And what that meant was all of the audited accounts had to go to the FIA at a certain date in March. I think it could say March the 7th, I want to say. Let me just check exactly what date it was. I think it was March the 7th. And because of that, Aston Martin did not get their accounts delivered on time, because they couldn't get a wet blue ink signature, I'm guessing from Lawrence Stroll or from somebody, because of logistics. So that meant their accounts went in late. They didn't breach anything. There was no advantage gained. They didn't spend more money than they were allowed to. They just got their accounts in late. So they've agreed a fine, and that's it. But every team operated within the cost caps. So all these rumours of McLaren or Mercedes or Ferrari, and I jumped on those rumours too about they've been spending more money than they should. They have been spending more money, but they were spending money in ways that they were allowed to spend money outside of what's included in the Formula One cost caps. So that is how the money works in F1, and that is how we get drivers getting paid 40 million, and that's a year, and that's how we've got the rumor of Aston Martin offering or considering offering or approaching Max Verstappen with a huge offer of $1 billion of signing him up for 10 years, because none of that would come out of their cost cap. Hey, how about that? A little bit of edutainment for you. Did you like it? Yeah, cost caps explained. Because it's amazing how many people talk to me about this stuff. Because there's loads of new fans coming into F1 and don't understand a lot of how the money works. So that's literally the best way I can put it to explain how the money works in Formula One. But yeah, there are still big advantages if you're Ferrari, if you're Mercedes, if you're McLaren, or even if you're Aston Martin, if you've got the money to attract top drivers and pay them top money. Same with like Adrian Newey's of the world, or Binotto at Audi, or any of your top 3 paid staff members. You can pay them anything you like to attract that top talent. And obviously the smaller teams like Haas could never afford to get Bonotto to come and run their team for them and pay him 40 million a year. They just can't do it, can they? Right? But if you're a works team like Audi, Volkswagen Group, then of course you can do that. You can bring in top talent. You can go and get Christian Horner for 80 million a year. Hey, Will! Good to see you, mate. I keep saying I'm going to be here, then something happens. I hope you're well, mate. You've joined us at the right time. You've just finished my lecture on Formula One cost caps and how the money works in F1. So make sure at the end of the show you go back and watch that. Hopefully you'd find it edutaining. But yeah, Aston Kyle, Aston Martin is definitely overpaying Lance Stroll. Do you know what Lance Stroll's wages are? Lance Stroll gets 3.5 million a year, which is what on the lower end of F1 drivers. It really is. I think Fernando Alonso's on something like 8 or 9 million. But yeah. So how are you getting on, Will? He says, sorry I haven't been here for the past 2 days. Got into my stepdad's new home and had to get adjusted. And also on the way to get my mum on the M25 after she had to go onto the emergency. Oh, mate, that sounds a bit of a day, brother. Wow. Crazy. That is a bit of a day when you got to go and do that. But do you know what? Good for you for helping everyone out. You should feel like a hero today, Will. Now you can chill. Now you can chill. You're with friends and you can relax. Because we're also going to be talking about, we've covered a lot about the cost cap and how that works. And even Lance Stroll is getting 3.5 million a year. That money does not come out of the Aston Martin team cost cap. Yay! We're all learning. But if he crashes the car and they have to rebuild it, that does come out of the 145 million team cost cap. So that's how it all works. But that does bring me on to my second talking point tonight. I want to talk about our friend, Yuki Tsunoda. Because Yuki Tsunoda, let's talk about it. Mexico Grand Prix. We need to go back to just before the Mexico Grand Prix. All the news was that Red Bull Racing, i.e. Helmut Marko, was going to announce his decision on the driver lineup for Red Bull and for Racing Bulls after the Mexico Grand Prix. But the rumours prior to that, him even saying that, was that Yuki Tsunoda has basically has lost his drive at Red Bull and at Racing Bulls, and he is going to be looking for a new drive. The problem with that is Yuki Tsunoda is the second driver in a Red Bull car when the first driver in the Red Bull car is Max Verstappen, who is on a charge for the World Drivers' Championship. Okay? Yuki's now become quite important. And in Mexico, that was proven because what they did to Yuki in Mexico City, where they literally threw him under the bus. Max pits, one-stop strategy. Yuki stays out on track while everyone else is pitting, gets himself in, let's say, P4. And he wants to pit because his tyres are totally gone. And the team says to him, no, Yuki. You stay out, son. He's like, yeah, but I'm driving on marbles. I really need to pit. No, Yuki. You stay out, son. You've got track position and you defend. You block as much as you can and help Max get a gap. And Yuki did that. He stayed out for a good, I want to say five or six laps after the death of his tyres, doing his best to hold up the queue of traffic behind him. He did an okay job at it, to be fair. And by the time they pitted him, it ruined his race. And then poor Yuki, who qualified really quite well, and in Q2 was only 2/10 behind Max Verstappen, having a very promising weekend. They then sabotage, they throw him under the bus to help Max. And then Yuki finishes outside the points in P11. And at that point, you're thinking, well, Yuki finished P11, he's got to be out. But what happens at Red Bull? And the Dark Lord himself has realised, oh shit, we're on a charge now for Max Verstappen to win the World Drivers' Championship. Yuki's now become important. We're going to need him to play this role. repeatedly for the next 4 Grand Prix where we can sacrifice Yuki as a sacrificial lamb in any way possible to help Max win the World Drivers' Championship. So what's the one thing you can't do to Yuki? Well, you can't tell him he's not got a drive in 2026 if you want him to play that role. Plus, Arvid Lindblad in FP1 steps into Max's car and does a really good job. And he's the 6th fastest out of everybody. And he was the fastest rookie out of the 9 rookies taking part in FP1. Very impressive. Where you're thinking, well, the rumours are true. They're going to promote Arvid Lindblad into a Racing Bull seat. And then it's between Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson for the final seat because Hadjar's going to get promoted to the Red Bull. Helmut Marko has told us as much. But how do you tell Yuki, I need you to be a team player till the end of the season to help Max win the World Drivers' Championship if you can't tell him he hasn't got a drive in 26. So they've said, we're going to delay the announcement of the drivers. And here's what I think has happened. And this could be the best thing that could ever happen to Yuki Tsunoda. And that is, Yuki now has a job to do. A specific job to do. Help Max win the World Drivers' Championship. And this is what I think is, and this is how I think this now plays out for Yuki. And it's his best opportunity to stay in Formula One. If Max wins the World Drivers' Championship and Yuki manages to be close enough in qualifying to put himself in a position on track to help Max create a gap between the drivers that he needs to create a gap with, and he can block and throw away his own race and not score any points. But ultimately, at the end of these next 4 races, Max wins the World Drivers' Championship. I think Yuki saves his seat. And I think Arvid Lindblad stays in F2 for 1 more season, right? And you get Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda in the Racing Bulls. And I think that it would be Yuki's best chance of staying in F1. The reverse of that is, if Yuki does not perform well enough to help Max win the World Drivers' Championship, and Max doesn't win the World Drivers' Championship, I think Yuki's gone. And that's why Helmut Marko is delaying making the decision, because it's a Grand Prix by Grand Prix thing, you know, and I think that's what it is. So this could be Yuki's best chance to stay in F1 in a seat. Liam Lawson, I think, deserves to keep his seat at Racing Bulls. I think there is still the option of Yuki, as a reward for helping Max win the World Drivers' Championship, that he keeps a seat at the Racing Bulls, and that Liam Lawson gets sacrificed, and they still promote Arvid Lindblad. But Liam Lawson, I think, has been good enough and he's also a rookie, and the mentality is shown from being dropped from Red Bull and then coming back to be competitive in the Racing Bulls car, that it would be incredibly unfair for him to lose his seat. Would he get another seat? It depends what happens at Alpine, maybe, because where else is he going to go? But I think it'd be incredibly unfair on Liam Lawson to lose his seat. However, Arvid Lindblad's only 18. Another season, and his season in F2 has fallen apart. He can't win the championship. He's fallen away. Even though his performances in the F1 car have been very, very, very good, he's still not winning races in F2. So it would be sensible on a regulation change as big as this in 2026, a major regulation change with a whole new platform, to give him another year in F2 before he then gets a seat in F1. And I think that is a way this is going to play out. I think it's in Yuki's hands, and I think Max's performance now directly affects what happens to Yuki. So it's a kind of crazy situation where Yuki was absolutely out the door, but now it's all changing. The chess pieces are moving, and now Max has got a real chance of winning the World Drivers' Championship. Yuki's got a real chance of keeping an F1 seat in 2026. It's crazy. So I'm going to get the chat. So Kyle says, Hadjar or Lindblad? Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, Hadjar, I think, is nailed on for Red Bull. Kyle says Bottas helped Mercedes even when he knew he was leaving the team. Bottas did, but that's Bottas. You know, because here's the thing: it's Yuki. If Yuki gets told you're losing your seat, he's now got 4 races to audition for the available Alpine seat, right? So he can't sacrifice his own Grand Prix when he's really trying to impress one of the team boss where he might get a drive in Formula One. And if that means he needs to score points, he needs to score points. And I think that's the bottom line. He needs to show, because he hasn't had really very good point scoring finishes. He hasn't set the world on fire, and he needs to get a podium. So if you're Yuki Tsunoda and you've been told you've lost your seat in the Red Bull family and he's got 4 races left, I am going to go and try and get a podium. Team orders, sack that out the window. I'm going to show the world that I can be quick and I can be competitive. And that's the danger. You get a defiant driver who's out for himself. He's driving for him at that point. And that's the difference. Kyle says Yuki's going to be out because he won't have Honda back in the team next year. Yeah, but he has. You've got to remember, just because Honda aren't supplying him engines and Honda are supplying engines to Aston Martin, Honda back Yuki financially as well. They can pay big money for Yuki to get a seat, which is why the Alpine situation is interesting, because it's not just support by being an engine manufacturer. They have supported Yuki's career financially since he was probably about 8 years old. He's their guy. So they want him in F1 regardless, whether he's got a Honda engine powering him or not. So the big checkbook behind Honda could help him secure a seat. It may be Alpine. Kyle says, I think Liam is safe at VCARB, but Yuki's out. Yuki's had enough time to disappoint us. But that's the thing. But I agree with what you're saying. I think that is what it should be. But the thing that's changed all of that is Max now has a real chance of winning the World Drivers' Championship, and Yuki has got a real opportunity to help him do that by sacrificing his own race, by staying on track even when he needs to pit because he gains track position because everyone else has pitted. And so even if he's running P7 or P8, everyone pits in front of him. He's then up in P4, stays out on track for another 6 or 7 laps, just being a nuisance. Just helping Max scamper away because Max has already pitted at this point. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like it's if he plays that role, and yeah, ultimately because of Yuki's awful pit strategy at that point, he's going to finish out the points. But he's helped Max get the World Drivers' Championship. That's the wild card to all of it. If it all fails and Max does not win the World Drivers' Championship, well, then I'm not sure Yuki gets, I don't think they look after him, basically. I think they do look after him if they hit the goal of Max winning the World Drivers' Championship. And I actually think that's how it is. And it sounds totally unfair, but I actually think it's the brainchild. If I've got to put myself in the position of this guy. I am trying to think like everyone's favourite, your favourite and mine. I'm trying to think like the Dark Lord himself, Helmut Marko. He's the guy that makes the decision of who's driving for Racing Bulls and who's driving for Red Bull. It's this guy, the sole director of Red Bull Racing. So I'm trying to put myself and think like Helmut Marko. And if for Helmut Marko, I think he's a ruthless old fox. And I think that's the deal. I think that's what it is. I think he'll honour an agreement with Yuki and give him a drive if Max is successful in winning the World Drivers' Championship. If Max doesn't win the World Drivers' Championship, I think all bets are off. I think it didn't work out. Thanks for all your help, Yuki. Good luck with your career, right? Maybe you'll give him a bonus or something, but I don't think he'll get the drive. And that's what I think. That's how I think this is going to play out. Because if you're Helmut Marko, you're playing you're playing sort of 5D chess, aren't you? You're trying to keep him motivated. You think about all your chess pieces and how you're going to move them around. And now you've got this wild card that we never thought could happen, is that Max Verstappen could actually win the World Drivers' Championship. And now Red Bull are even bringing upgrade after upgrade after upgrade to try and help him do that. And Helmut Marko says all of these upgrades to the Red Bull car is not in any way taking anything away from the 26 car. And that is what we're talking about. So you got to think like this guy. You got to think like the Dark Lord. And that's what I'm trying to do, joining up these dots. Destroyed Television said, pretty sure I saw a spreadsheet yesterday of the series of events that need to line up in order for Max to win. It's super wild, but not impossible. Would love to see it happen. I looked at a spreadsheet yesterday about it, but they didn't factor in any DNFs. They were talking about if Oscar and Lando were both finishing. Max has to win everything, sprint races and everything. And if Lando finished second in every race, I think Max wins. That's right. I think Lando still wins. But if Lando gets a fourth, then Max wins. So Max has to win everything. Lando has to come second in everything and a fourth, right? And Max wins. It is very possible. And you know what? Don't rule out, by the way, the two McLarens having a coming together at some point. Like, I actually think that could happen in the next 4 races. And Mikhail says the same thing. Short of crashing into a McLaren, Yuki's worthless. At least take out a front wing or two. And you know what? And you know what, Kyle? Now you're thinking like the Dark Lord, right? If it comes down to it where they need a DNF for Lando Norris, and Yuki Tsunoda can make that happen as a racing incident, I mean, who's to say that isn't the way this man is thinking? Because I tell you what, Christian Horner would think like that, wouldn't he? And you're not wrong. I wouldn't put it past Kyle. I honestly wouldn't put that past this man's thinking. Win at all costs. Red Bull have had not the best year, and they want to win something. And Max wants to win something, because if Max wins the World Drivers' Championship in a Red Bull, Max is happy again, right? He's happier anyway. They want to keep him past 26. They want Max to honour his entire contract, which is, to the end of 28. So, yeah, I actually think Kyle makes a really good point. I know he's saying it as a bit of a joke, but I actually think that's really possible, Kyle. Yuki having a coming together with a McLaren where he takes a front wing off purely by accident, that would change the course of the World Drivers' Championship. And that could happen, right? It could. DT says, the chart I saw said they all end up with the same points, but due to the amount of wins Max had, it'd make him World Drivers' Champion. It would. I think that's... We might have seen a similar one. I was under the impression that Lando Norris has to finish second, and have 1/4 to make it happen. But that's the thing, Kyle. Yuki doesn't have to qualify ahead of them. He doesn't. Because Yuki, this is my absolute point. Yuki can qualify 7th. Piastri and Norris can qualify 2nd and 3rd. Yuki just have to stay on track and not pit. If Yuki doesn't pit, and Lando pits and Oscar pits, Yuki retains track position. As long as he stays within 25 seconds of Norris and Piastri, wherever he is, wherever he qualifies, he will have track position, right? Because he hasn't pitted. And that is why Yuki becomes important. Because that's exactly what he did in Mexico City. Yuki stays out on track. Oscar and Lando pit. Yuki gains track position, and he's perfectly entitled to defend his track position regardless of the fact he's on shitty old tyres and they're on new rubber and they're going to be quicker. All Yuki's got to do is make his car really big. And like Kyle said, if there was a coming together at that point, it would be, if it's a racing incident, regardless of the fact that Yuki hasn't pitted yet, he still has track position. That means if he's in P3, he's in P3. Even if Oscar and Lando have pitted and they're in P4 and 5. Right? And that is the point. Yuki doesn't have to be that close in qualifying. He doesn't. He just has to be within 25 seconds of Lando and Oscar when they pit. That's it. That's all he has to do. And that's how they do it. And that's why Yuki becomes a sacrificial lamb, and it fucks up his race because they keep him out on track, and by the time he does pit, he's out the points. Motorsport fan, hey, welcome to the chat, my friend. So many drivers have struggled in that second Red Bull car for these past number of years, ever since starting from Gasly in 2019. Exactly, because everyone's playing second fiddle to to Max Verstappen. But that also is why Arvid Lindblad's performance in FP1 in Mexico City was so impressive. Not only is he in a Red Bull car, he's in Max's Red Bull car, and the setup of Max's car is pretty horrible for most drivers. It's the front end is so aggressive. Yet Arvid Lindblad was 6th fastest of all in FP1, fastest rookie, and that's what made that performance in FP1 by Arvid Lindblad so impressive. He's in Max's car, didn't crash it, and he was quick. So, and also in FP1, the setup of the car's not even been really tweaked and honed in for the racetrack. It's a guess at this point. After FP1, they make their adjustments. FP2, they make more adjustments. And by the time they get to actually qualifying, the car's dialed in. FP1, the car isn't dialed in at all. And that's why Arvid Lindblad's performance in that car was so impressive, which what gives Helmut Marko this real driver dilemma and why he's delaying his decision. He's got all these chess pieces that he's trying to decide and move around, which is going to be best for the teams, and keep Yuki, on task to do as he's told, to give him hope that he's still got a chance of a seat. And it's mind games. Imagine Red Bull regrets letting him go. Oh, Perez. I just hope Perez, when he's in that Cadillac next year, shows the world just how good he is. Because Sergio Perez, he's a good driver. There's no doubt about it. And everyone from Perez, Gasly, Alexander Albon, Lawson, really, I can't think of anyone who hasn't had to play second fiddle to Max, where they were doing test setups so Max could get data to help dial in Max's car. But all of these second drivers, that's what they were there to do. It was all about supporting Max. Now, the one thing I'll say about Lauren McKees, since he's come into Red Bull as team principal, is he's eliminated that to some degree. He gave Yuki a similar car to Max. The first thing he did was, when Max had an upgraded floor, was, we'll give Yuki that floor. Let's get this a level playing field, right, for both drivers. And Yuki's performances instantly improved. They weren't great, but they improved. And I think that's one good thing that we can say Laurent McKees has done at Red Bull. He's given Yuki a more comparable car. I'm not saying it's exactly Max's car, but he's definitely given him a more comparable car. Motorsport fans said all of these drivers are proving to be decent and good. Yuki should be able to thrive with another team, like what Gasly, Albon, Perez, and Lawson are doing. I almost agree. Yuki did have some good results with Racing Bulls, but I still think there's a question mark with Yuki. Like, I never felt he did enough in the sister team. He did okay. But you are right. Like, you see people like Gasly and Albon, Lawson at Racing Bulls, all going on to be competitive in a midfield car. And Gasly, what he's done in that Alpine, actually, is a bit underrated. To score any points in that car and score all the points for Alpine and get 20 points this season, he's done well. And that's why he was rewarded with his contract extension, because they've rewarded him at a time when Alpine will improve, because they've got the Mercedes power unit next year. They don't have to worry about that anymore. They just have to worry about sorting out mechanical grip, suspension, aero, chassis, and maybe they've got the resources at Alpine to do a good job of that. And they've been working on this 2026 car consistently this year without bringing any upgrades, and sacrificed the rest of the 25 season. So Gasly really will get a chance to shine next year if the Alpine boys have delivered a half decent car. Carl says, I think the second driver has struggled because they haven't had enough time to get used to the car. It has to be entirely different than the V-carb. Look at how Lewis has struggled with Ferrari. This is a very, very good point. A very, very good point. Every car is going to have its optimum way to drive that car, to extrapolate the best performance out of the car. And you're absolutely right. Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton is a great example. How long does it take a driver to adjust? I don't know. Good drivers will adjust quicker. And Lewis is a good driver, but if it's a car that's a completely different driving style, then yeah, I think time needed in that seat is important, but also because every driver prefers different characteristics of a car. Well, if you're a team like Red Bull developing a car for the lead driver like Max Verstappen, who likes a very specific characteristics, well then if your second driver doesn't like those characteristics, it's almost impossible to then reset up the car for that second driver, because you know you're going to sacrifice performance. So you are going to get a completely different car, and that is what we're seeing at Ferrari, and that's what we're seeing, you know, at other teams. But this is why 2026 is going to be so fascinating, because every single driver is effectively going to be driving a car that's alien to them, because all of these cars will need to be driven in an optimum driving style, which is yet to be determined. Because when you're talking about 50% electrification, lift and coast, regenerative braking, all of these techniques are going to be heightened, and they're going to be needed to be used more, because the conservation of battery power, or the management of that battery power, is going to become so important for race pace, that literally every driver on the grid is going to have to relearn the best way to get the optimum performance out of the new platform, out of their new cars. So next year is going to be really fascinating. Which drivers will adjust quickly? They're all in the simulators, and Charles Leclerc's already said he hates driving the 2026 car, and he's not alone. There isn't a driver that said, Max said he doesn't like it. Every driver that has done any simulation of the 2026 car have all said, we do not like it. We hate driving these cars. At the moment, will the cars evolve over time? Yeah, they will. Will they try and get a feel in the car that each driver likes? Yeah, of course they will. But overall, they've got they're like bullets down the straight, yet they've lost so much grip with the smaller tires, the remove, you know, the aero package being completely different, no Venturi tunnels, you know, the ground effect's gone. You've gone back to sort of mechanical grip. So the cars are effectively going to be slower around. We're going to see probably a couple of seconds a lap slower, but down the straight they're going to be quicker. But then, even then, this is all speculation, because by the time we hit the grid in Melbourne in 26, they may have found more pace out of these cars, because we just don't know. We just don't know yet. And the drivers in the simulators are trying to work out a way and find a feel for these cars. But that's why 2026 is going to be a really interesting year in Formula One, because between the top team and the bottom team, there could be a 4-second difference, because everyone's going to bring their own interpretation of the rules and regulations, and then the cars will all be, there'll be a massive variation between the cars in the first season, and throughout the season, the cars that are the quickest, everyone starts copying them, and then we basically start seeing carbon copies of each cars, and they can become more similar by the end of the season and go into year 2 and year 3 and year 4, because it's a 5-year cycle, right? But by the time we're in year 5, the cars are literally very, very similar to look at. So yeah, that is really how it's going to go. So Kyle says Gasly won in VCarb. Yuki's never had a podium. Kyle also says Williams Duracell sponsorship will be fitting in 2026. Yeah, it will. Someone needs the Energizer Bunny. It'd be a good fit for Alpine's pink car. That's brilliant. It's true. Battery manufacturers should be all over these cars in 26. Duracell. I'm trying to think of the good ones. Energizer. What others? Kodak. They do batteries. Kodak. They make cameras, but they make good batteries. So yeah, it's going to be a fascinating 2026 is going to be fascinating, absolutely fascinating. All drivers will be learning something new, and then we'll see which drivers adjust quickly to the new driving style for these cars. And some people like Lewis Hamilton actually will probably find that his driving style might suit these new cars better than the ground effect cars. Yeah, Kodak Cadillac. That's brilliant, DT. What a great sponsor for Cadillac. Cadillac's Kodak moment with Bottas with his cowboy boots on, his big moustache and his Stetson. I can see it. Get your Kodak moment with Cadillac. Oh, you couldn't write this stuff. Motorsport fan said, did you see the latest video of Andy Cowell posted onto Aston Martin's YouTube channel? No, tell me. What's Andy Cowell saying? What have I missed? Fill me in, motorsport fan. What have I missed? Kyle Mel said, DT, I'd love to hear that in the race. Yeah, brilliant. Kodak could be a great battery sponsor. But yeah, motorsport fan, what did I miss? I'm going to watch it as soon as I finish the stream. What's Andy Cowell posted on Aston Martin's YouTube channel? Is it Lance Stroll doing something wild in the Aston Martin? Is it Adrian Newey? Is he talking about Adrian Newey's amazing new cockpit? Please tell me it's something good. Or is it to do with Lawrence Stroll hating George Russell? Any of these stories, I'm here for, motorsport fan. You've got to tell us in the chat what has been going on. 2026 cars should be able to suit drivers like Lewis and Fernando. That car looked almost like from the 2000s. I love that, because it's not just Andy Cowell who's been saying this. Toto Wolff, very early on in this season, was talking about their car for 2026 and the new regulations. And he said, the good thing about 2026 is the ground effect era didn't suit Mercedes, didn't suit Lewis Hamilton, but he is absolutely confident that the 2026 car is going to suit Mercedes and it is going to suit Lewis Hamilton. And if anybody knows Lewis Hamilton's driving style better than anyone, it's Toto Wolff. So I actually think you might find Lewis Hamilton super uber competitive if Ferrari's power unit is up to scratch, because that is the question mark still. Have Ferrari succeeded in developing a power unit that's going to be good as Mercedes or Audi or Honda? I do not see any data that is the case. Not yet. No, Sir J. F1 starts on my birthday for the first time ever next season. 8th of March, baby. Can't wait. So this is great, No, Sir J. So our first watch along will be on your birthday. So you can be celebrating your birthday, watching F1 Grandstand's watch along of the Australian Grand Prix, the new regulations. That first Grand Prix is going to be wild. It's going to be wild. I can't wait. And we'll all be watching practice as well. It's going to be so much fun. But it's going to be a great start to your birthday. Yeah, brilliant. I wonder, though, whether you'll have paid your girlfriend £100 because Lewis has made a podium in the next 4 races. Gemma says cake all round. March 8th will feel like all our birthdays. You're right, Kyle. But don't worry. I've got loads of plans for the off-season. We will still be making content. Loads and loads of cool stuff in between December and March. We'll still be on air every day. I've got a lot of cool content that we'll be doing. F1 won't be going away here at F1 Grandstand. We'll still be making content and we'll still be doing some very, very cool stuff. So don't you worry. We will feed that F1 habit. Yes, Will. Yeah, just put the stats in here. I love it. Motorsport fans, I thought it was a good video. Yeah, brilliant. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch the Aston Martin video after I finish here. But it's been a good show tonight. A little bit of edutainment for everybody. Because of Helmut Marko, Yuki looks like he's got a chance of staying in Formula One. We all now know how the cost cap works, and it's been a lot of fun discussing it. I like it. Plus the fact we know when No Sir J's birthday is, so we'll all know when to send him a card. So Max, I'm going to say Will. So Max Verstappen's estimated net worth has increased by almost 44 million in the last year and now stands at just 230 million. Quota 500. A list of the wealthiest people in the Netherlands ranks the Red Bull racer at 264th place, up from 322nd last year. Wow. Max Verstappen making so much money. And that goes back to the cost cap, doesn't it? Because if you're a team that can afford Max Verstappen, well, then that's a hell of an advantage. You know? Drivers' salaries are not included in the goddamn cost cap, and neither are your top 3 employees in the team. So Toto Wolff can take his 200 million a year, whatever he takes out of the team. I have no idea, but I'm sure it's huge. You know, your Andy Cowells, your Adrian Newey's, you know, your Benottos, all these people are getting paid mega dough, and none of it comes out of your cost cap. Yeah, drinks are on him, exactly. Guess the last driver that hasn't finished on the podium once in a single season when he's at Ferrari. Oh, that's a great question. Guess the last driver that hasn't finished on the podium once in a single season. Barrichello? I'd be surprised because Barrichello did get a lot of podiums. Go on. What's the answer, Motorsport fan? I want to know. Kyle said, when I had a cost of 50, the accident at Red Bull in merch sales. That's true. Hat. Yeah. Kimi Raikkonen he didn't get a podium in 2014. Jesus. That was his second stint at Ferrari because he is a Ferrari world champion. In 2014, he didn't get a podium. That's a great bit of trivia. Thanks, Motorsport fan. That's his first year back at Ferrari after leaving Lotus. That's a great stat. That is a great stat. Kimi Raikkonen 2014. Put it on a t-shirt. But you can let him off though because he did win a championship for Ferrari, and we all know how hard it is to win a world championship at Ferrari. You know, a lot of people failed. They said sun hats were $110 in Mexico at the track. That's insane. If I promise you this, if I do Formula One grandstand sun hats, they will not cost that much. Guaranteed. When we start doing merch, they definitely won't be that much. And they might have a picture of Tubby George on it. Oh, guys, listen. Tomorrow night, I want to see more of these stats. I love it. So apparently Max had to have damage limitation in Mexico. That's why he was slow, according to Will. Yeah, I don't know. Did Max catch some damage in that first corner? I don't have a logo in Dark Lord's picture. I know. I thought, well, actually, I did have a logo on his picture, but when I cropped it in, it had gone. I have to put one on him. I'll have to put an F1 Grandstand one over that Tagger, over that Tagger logo. Oh, brilliant. DT's got a screen printer. Love it. This is all coming together nicely. I've got some great ideas for merch when we get enough people. 100%. And the Andy Cowell Aston Martin video, they explored the Aston Martin factory. Do they? He speaks about the team's ambitions, how special of an engineer Adrian Newey is. Everyone's been talking about how good he is. Adrian Newey, guaranteed, has found loopholes in the 2026 regulations. My most exciting part of 2026 is, honestly, I want to be proven right about my prediction that Aston Martin are going to be at the front. That's what I want to be proven right, because I think Honda bespoke, it's literally a bespoke engine for Aston Martin because of their relationship, and they're only supplying them. Apparently the communication between the teams is fantastic. They're literally, the integration is perfect because they're not having to sacrifice anything on the engine because it has to be working other teams. It's like the Aston Martin package is going to be brilliant. It's going to be brilliant. Will said they had a balance issue because of the big grille, and he had to raise the ride height, bottom out in sector 2 apparently. Really? So the advantage that Red Bull have got or had was because they'd solved the ride height issue to run it a lower ride height. They weren't able to run it that ride height in Mexico City. Wow. Okay. No, so that would explain Max's loss in performance. Because that's the reason why the car's been going so well, is they managed to run the car at a lower ride height. And the plank wear was happening at the front of the plank. So making the car legal at the end of the race. Interesting. Love this. Thanks for that little tidbit, Will. Very, very, very interesting. No CJ says, do you reckon it'll be Lewis's last season next year? I think it will, but these cars don't suit him. I think next year, because we're in a brand new platform, I think if Ferrari get the power unit right, which I don't know, if Lewis is competitive next year, I think he stays, because Lewis holds all the cards. He's got a weird clause in his contract that at the end of next year, if he chooses to stay at Ferrari have to give him another year if he chooses. So it's in Lewis's hands. He has got a 1-year extension at Ferrari. Should he choose to activate it? It's not in Ferrari's hands, it's in Lewis's hands, which is the first time I've ever heard that of any driver having that clause in their contract, but that is in Lewis's contract. So will he retire? If he wins the World Drivers' Championship in that Ferrari, does he retire? I always think that drivers say they would do that, but when it actually happens, they're addicted. And if they won it that year, they probably think they'll do it again next year. So I don't know, is the honest answer. If he has a horrible year, he might retire, is what I think. Will says it's been widened in the section next to the floor, increasing the downforce, and it's had a more curved shaped floor. Yeah, exactly, the floor edge. Why is it only Aston Martin and McLaren who managed to solve the ride height issue, which is also the plank wear issue? Now, they're the only two teams that seem to have solved it. How did Ferrari not manage to solve that? When they designed a car to run at a certain ride height, they realised, wow, and the car worked really well at that ride height, it's uber competitive, and then find out in China that they can't do a 70 lap race because the plank wears too much and the car's illegal. So then the whole car balance is messed up because they have to raise the ride height, and they try and solve it with a new rear suspension, which hasn't really given them any ability to adjust anything. That rear suspension is so rigid that it allowed the car to run a little lower and some performance improvements, but it wasn't the way to solve the ride height issue that Red Bull managed to solve and McLaren managed to solve. I don't know how they didn't manage to do it. I honestly don't know. But Ferrari didn't crack it, and now are they going to crack it now with 4 races to go? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's all about lift and coast for Ferrari to get through the end of they're lifting and coasting to the end of the season. That's what Ferrari are doing. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. Please make sure you smash the like on the video and hit the bell notifications to stay up to date. We will be back tomorrow night at 7:30 GMT for some more F1 news. Thank you so much to everyone in the chat. Destroy Television, Motorsport Fan, Gemma, Will, Nosa, Jay, DT. Who else have we had? We've had Kyle, obviously. Can't forget Kyle. Everyone has been in the chat. Thank you so much. You made it really, really good fun. I will be back tomorrow night, 7:30. If there's any breaking news tomorrow, obviously do keep an eye out for that. There'll be videos which will be published, so do keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, do enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will see you all tomorrow. Ta-ta.